wearing contacts.
Oh, okay. I've
So I just
never been a fan of like sticking something in my eye. Enja does. I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. Cool. Well, here we go. Ready?
all right.
All right. Here
Ready?
we go. Hey, everybody. How's it going wherever you are? Let us know where you are. Chime in. Let us know where you are, what's happening, what's going on. How are you feeling? I'm Dan Shinder here live on Drum Talk TV, coming to you from Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains where it's a little cooler. And today we're going to talk drumming injury talk, prevention, maintenance, ergonomics, all that sort of stuff with Dr. Nadia Azar, professor of kinesiology at the University of Windsor, Canada. Nadia, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And I think we might have been live before we thought we were.
Probably, yeah. That it's a weird thing with the Facebook thing. When you go live, it somehow backs up before we go live. So if we were like telling dirty jokes or something, I apologize for
That
that.
would have been bad. Yeah.
I'm going to bring us up here on the monitor, but folks, the whole idea of this show is for you to learn how to minimize the risk of repetitive motion and other drumming injuries that could be affected by poor ergonomics and things like that, too much reach and different. We'll get into that, but also for you to ask Dr. Nadia some questions and share your experiences. If you've never had an injury, we want to hear from you because we want to know why. Share that
Mhm.
information. If you've suffered from an injury but gotten over it, share that information because it'll benefit everybody. If you're in the middle of dealing with what you might think would be a drumming related injury, let us know. So, where do we start? We haven't done this since October because, like, Nadia and I were talking before the show started, and we were trying to figure out, like, yeah, why haven't we done this in so long? And in November, my wife and I had COVID together at the same time. So we didn't do the show then. And then in December, the holidays came, and we were both playing catch up and all that. So here we are towards the very end of January 2021, finally getting back to drumming injury talk with Dr. Nadia Azar. So I have something that I want to put on the table, and I encourage all of you to share your stories. This is a safe zone where you can collect information to prevent, to maintain, and just share your story. Like I said, if you've never had an injury or if you've gotten over one, that'll benefit everybody. So lately, for the last, I want to say 2 months, I've had some weird stuff going on. And I thought I knew what was causing it, but now I'm not sure. So, Nadia, I would love your feedback. Both
Okay.
my ring fingers, and it started with this one, have what my doctor is referring to as trigger finger. I'm going to take my rings off,
Mhm.
and it gets sort of like stuck like that and pops back into place. And then about a month later, it happened with this one. I'm really not sure if it has to do with drumming. The only other things I've been doing in excess besides drumming is I type a lot because I'm working. And the other thing is, I mentioned to you that we have this tool that's like a fat broomstick. It's steel, and at the bottom it has these two big forks, and it's to pry pallets apart. We built this big wall
Mhm.
out of wooden pallets. So I was doing this a lot, and that's when it started to bother me. But I couldn't make the connection of that motion with the injury or whatever's going on. So then a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, I went to my doctor for a bunch of other stuff, and everything's fine. And he said that that's caused by nodules that develop on the tendon. And he thinks
Mhm.
it could be related to my diabetes, which I'm very grateful to say I'm almost 100% completely reversed by
Nice.
natural remedies. Yeah, but he thinks, and he said if your finger gets stuck to where you have to pop it with your hand, then he'll recommend me for surgery and they just scrape the nodules off. And I said, I don't want to wait till it's that bad. Like, can we just do it now? So, because my numbers are so low with the diabetes, he wants to see. But what do you make of that in your
Mhm.
history dealing with kinesiology and drumming injuries? Has that particular affliction ever come up?
So I haven't seen it come up with drummers. It may have been mentioned once or twice in my survey, but not enough for me to really make a connection with it.
Okay.
I've heard of the condition, and I'm not super familiar with it, but I do know that we see it in industrial settings a lot. And I think that's even
Oh,
actually where the name came from, because when people are using power tools.
yeah. And I
And
was
so,
using a lot of drilling and a lot
yep.
of a skill saw, and then the prying. So maybe that's it.
Mhm.
It's not drumming related, but I have been playing drums, which I'm sure has aggravated it.
Probably aggravated it to an extent. I don't know that it would cause it,
Okay.
unless you drastically change something about your technique,
Not at all. I'm
and the
too
way you're
lazy.
gripping.
Yeah.
So probably not then.
Is it
But
possible Enja aggravated it at all?
no, not at all.
Okay, that's my wife. For those of you who don't know, I'm just searching for solutions here.
Yeah, no. So the little that I do know about it is, like I said, in industrial settings, a lot of use of power tools, power like drills and things like that.
Yeah.
And if you think about the way drills are designed, I'm actually a little surprised it's in your ring fingers. But think
Yeah,
about the
me
way drills
too.
are designed. You really only have like one or two fingers that you can use on the trigger.
Right, usually the
Um,
index finger.
Right. So it's a little weird, but it could even just be from like, because those drills, especially if it's the one with the battery underneath, they're really heavy, right?
Yeah, we
So
have
just
one like
gripping,
that and one that plugs into AC.
yeah. So, and which those are heavy too.
Yeah.
And just from squeezing to control like the torque on it and things like that. So it's likely something related more to that than the drumming. Not
Okay.
saying that it can't come from that, but I doubt that's what it is, especially if you haven't like taken a really long hiatus from drumming, you're still
Yeah.
playing, you haven't made any major changes. I don't think that would be the case, but
Okay.
I'm sure there are cases of people who have gotten trigger finger from drumming, but I don't necessarily. I think it's probably more related to the work you were doing in the yard.
And I've noticed, and I mentioned to Enja that for the last week or two, it's been even more painful, particularly in
Oh
my
yeah.
left hand, and it hurts throughout, like from this finger down through the palm. And it's been cold here. It snowed a couple days ago for 2 days, and I said to her, she used to be a nurse, and I
Mhm.
said, I wonder if this is also arthritic stuff going on. So she thought maybe it's a combination of the arthritis, the nodules, my doctor said, and I'm
Mhm.
playing drums. Like how could that possibly help, right?
Yeah, it could definitely, the drumming could be exacerbating it, but yeah, the nodules themselves develop right on the tendon, and
Okay.
that's what makes it get stuck, because the nodule develops in a certain place that it slides as you move your finger, and there are other connective tissues and things in there that it kind of gets hooked on, and you have to really force it to get past that, and that's when you get the little pop, basically.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. And I'm bringing the
yeah.
show up, folks. I'm not watching the hockey game, eh? I'm watching our show so I can see your comments and everything. That's really interesting. What causes those nodules? Is it the diabetes? Is it some other too much of some minerals or deficiency? Or could that be acquired by drummers from something?
So I don't know enough about trigger finger to know specifically
Okay.
what causes the nodules.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're just like a thickening of the tissue, or I don't think it's inflammation though. But I don't think, given that we see it in industrial settings,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly industrial workers could have diabetes too, and probably a
Right.
lot of them do. But I don't think that it's like a direct, I don't think it would be a direct cause, like because you have diabetes you're developing this trigger finger
Okay.
thing.
Okay, good.
It's more likely a combination of other factors. Maybe it does play into it a little bit, but I don't know. I've never heard of it like a direct association between diabetes and trigger finger. Be
Okay.
interesting to look that up though, because I,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer for sure, but I've never come across that.
Okay, interesting.
So.
Folks, let us know, what are you dealing with as far as injuries? Do you have anything going on in the joints of your hands, your fingers, your wrists, your elbows, bursitis, your shoulders, lower back pain, your arches, your ankles? All this is related to either repetitive motion or the ergonomics. I still have these two cymbals on my setup that one of them is a backwards mounted stacker of 3 cymbals. I don't use that one that much, but there's a small 14-inch China I use somewhat, and they're both in a position where I just can't find a closer position because of all the other garbage set up. And I've mentioned this before. Every time I reach and whack for that, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to kill me. Oh my God, she's going to kill me. Nadia's going to kill me because I feel like, yeah, I know I'm reaching too far, but I don't know where else to put it. So talk about ergonomics a little bit and that struggle that some drummers have between how they want their set up theatrically for a good show and what it might be doing to us physically.
Yeah. So definitely, I've noticed this a lot, that drummers tend to have, their cymbals are up high, or they've got like the upper rack and things like that. And right. I know drummers put a lot of energy into their playing. The problem is that if they're reaching too far and too often, so you've got 2 issues there. One is that it's an extreme posture, meaning you're reaching sort of the end limits of your elbow joint. You're stretching, you're flexing your shoulder a whole lot, and your tissues are pretty stretched out at that point. So you're putting a lot of strain on those tissues. Then add to that the fact that you're hitting something really hard. You've now got vibration, like shock waves, traveling up your arm through tissues that are stretched and are tight, and that transmits, or your tissues don't do as good of a job of damping out that vibration, so you can have some impacts there. Right. But in particular, the issues are the extended or the extreme postures, and how often you're doing it. So if you're only hitting those the China and that stack like once in a while, like every other song or a little bit here and there, that's fine. What you don't want is like your hi-hats or your ride or something that you play like often, every song multiple times. You want that stuff nice and close so you can keep yourself in a relatively neutral posture and you're not overextending your joints. At the same time, you don't want everything super close because then your muscles don't have enough room to actually produce force. Right. So there's sort of like an optimal range of how far away and how high you want things. But in general, the stuff you use most often, keep it within that envelope. And the stuff you don't use that often can be the more extreme, further away or awkward, if you have to turn a bit to hit something or whatever. If you're only doing that a couple times a show, it's unlikely to be a problem. If you're doing that multiple times in a song all night long, it's going to cause a problem sooner or later.
Yeah, especially if you introduce another factor, which is the velocity of which you reach for something that maybe isn't where it should be because it's already stretching your limits with tendons and muscles, and then the velocity of going from way down here to bam, little things like that will just exasperate it, I would think.
Yeah, it's an effort and an efficiency thing. When everything's within a comfortable reach, you don't have to work as hard to get to it. You don't have to move as quickly. So there are good reasons from just a playing efficiency perspective too, to keep things in close.
Awesome. Let's take a look at the comments and see who's got questions. Here's Bobby Stevens from Bobby's Drum Lab. We posted a video of his recently. Awesome drummer. Thanks for chiming in, Bobby, and I'm glad you were able to join us. Bobby says, this is Bobby Stevens. My video just got posted this morning. Thank you, guys. So on December 14th, I had a carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists. So I was about 6 weeks from drumming. Wasn't cool at all. I finally got to play 2 days ago. So far, so good. Awesome. Bobby, I'm curious if you could chime in and let us know if you know what the carpal tunnel was developed from. Was it from drumming? Was it from typing on a keyboard or anything else? That would be cool to know. Thanks for joining us. Eric Volker, thank you. Says, watch out for Folka Dystonia drummers. Nadia Azar, what's happening? Is a stalker, obviously. Jordan Mathis says,
it's pretty cute, though.
Says, hi, Dr. Azar. I agree. Says, hey, Dr. Azar. Hi, Dan. Mad love from Florida. As always, thank you very much, Jordan. We appreciate it. Let me see if there's other questions. Um, thanks, Stephen. Stephen Shinder, associate producer, says the picture's freezing here and there, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's just him or not. And Brian Cahoon says hi to both of us,
I
grasping
can
at
see it on my
straw.
screen too.
Yeah, that it's
Yeah,
freezing a
I have
little
it up
bit.
and I can see it freezing. Yeah, I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but
It,
I've noticed that before.
yeah, it could be. It could be our internet, the viewers' internet. It could be the way the planets are aligned. It could be a bird or a beaver out on our line. I have no idea, but I do know that when I've seen
Are there
stuff freeze up
beavers there?
live when it archives, it looks great. I don't know what
Oh
the
yeah.
deal is, but we'd
Hmm.
love to know what anybody else either might be experiencing, or how they got past a drumming injury, or if you
Hmm.
have any questions at all, let us know. While we're waiting for those questions, not to put you on the spot, Dr. Nadia, but I have a question.
Okay.
How has your drumming been coming along?
Well, it really hasn't. I haven't sat down to play. I actually got a really nice gift from Drumeo. I got one of their drum pads and I have sticks and even that like right in my face. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that right now.
You just
It's
haven't had the
bad.
time.
Oh, I've had the time. I
Oh,
just haven't. Yeah. I'm not making excuses.
that's
I'm
funny.
owning this. I'm not putting aside the time to practice. And part of that I think is being in the house with, like I mentioned before we went on, we're in lockdown right now. So we've got, two kids doing online school, and Dory's running his business 5 feet away from where I'm sitting right now, and I'm here. So it's kind of, especially as someone who's just learning
Yeah.
and is still a little like intimidated by making that much noise. It's a little daunting to think about sitting down and practicing with other people in the house. So
Oh,
yeah,
all I could say to that is just dive in. It's
I
fun to get
know
physical. That's
it
one of the
is.
things I love about drumming. That's my exercise. Last night, just for no reason whatsoever, I just felt like playing, so I went down to the studio and I played, and it felt great. It was, that's how I sort of blow off steam and get my heart rate up and all that. We've done a lot of that. Nadia came out here for 3 days
Yeah.
a year ago last September. Can't believe it was that long ago, a year and a half ago. And we did 3 days together where
Yeah.
she hooked me up to monitors, and we monitored my heart rate and my caloric burn. If I remember right, in no particular order, well, no, I think this was it. The first day was about 45 minutes or an hour of all Led Zeppelin music. The next day
Hmm.
was all Rush music. And the third
Hmm.
day was all a mishmash of different progressive music. And we measured, heart rate and everything like that. So it's great exercise. It just feels good to get
Hmm.
moving without having to go somewhere if your drums are at home.
It's true. And I, of all people, should know that and should know better. But you know what they
Yeah.
say about, just because you know better doesn't mean that it's going to happen. They
Yeah.
say like doctors' kids get sick and,
Yeah.
that whole thing.
I've
So,
known
yeah.
doctors that smoke. I mean, what the hell is up with that, right?
Yeah.
I knew a
Yeah.
cop once that robbed a bank. We won't get into that. Let's see if we have other questions or anything. Jordan also says, this is all in my one exabyte cardio endurance. Jerky cable TV. Not sure what's up with that. Sorry. It's not the codec. It's Facebook. Thank you, Facebook. So yeah, sorry. Don't know why it's happening. Nothing I can do
Hmm.
about it. Sorry. So hopefully the archive will be nice. If you're watching this on the archive, feel free to chime in with the same issues, same questions, same feedback, because we'll be checking this over time, after this
Yep.
publishes. Since we haven't done this since, wow, October of
Mm.
2020, maybe you can give everybody an idea of what are, let's say, two, maybe three of the most common things that are causing drumming injuries, whether it's ergonomics or repetitive motion.
Hmm. So as far as the causes, I really only have assumptions that I can make right now. I can talk about the most common injuries that I've seen reported. And I know that there's a lot of research evidence that those are related to repetitive motion and awkward postures and things like that. And that's the two most common injuries I came across were tendonitis and carpal tunnel syndrome.
Oh,
So yeah, so both of those are related to repetitive motion in particular. But they are also related to some extent, high forces
right.
and extreme postures. Thinking about carpal tunnel syndrome, the carpal tunnel is the little space in between your wrist bones where your blood vessels and nerves pass into your hand. And when it's a very small space, your body's built very efficiently. There's not a whole lot of room in there. So when you're doing a lot of repetitive, like this, like motion, when you move your wrist in these either extremes, it condenses that tunnel. And so it's squeezing and putting pressure on the nerve, in particular, in that space. And over time, the nerve gets irritated. Also, the tendons for your finger movements, those all pass through there too. So again, with that repetitive motion, those tendons get irritated, the nerve get irritated, and you start getting those symptoms of the pain, which might be the tendon, and the numbness, tingling, that sort of thing. If you've got that, that's an indication of a nerve issue.
Interesting. So, that's how that happens.
Yep.
Folks, if the audio is good, but the picture is jacked up, just pretend it's a podcast with a slideshow. The information's always going to be good, no matter what it looks like. Someone actually texted me because they're having problems with the video, but Jim Host says, "Oh, Dad, I wish I could get on your conversation today. I got hit 2 times on my knee, is cracking like the 4th of July. I wanted to ask Dr. Nadia what I possibly can do. I played last week at a church, and I had a nice part lined up, but missed it because the damn knee locked up. Oh, well, maybe next time she's on. But and I'll send the link to this to Jim. Any feedback on that? And I don't think Jim mentions how he thinks that happened. Oh, he got hit 2 times on his knee. So he's got a wife for the rolling pin like I do, except Angie hits me in the head rather than the knee.
So he had, it's really hard to say.
Yeah,
some knee impact. If he had banged his knee a couple times,
and then it locked up while he was playing.
Some things were swollen in there, and he went to move, and it couldn't move fast. Maybe it didn't actually. I mean, he's not here. I can't ask him. Maybe it didn't actually lock up. Maybe it just kind of like stuttered for a minute. Which in the timing of drumming, it might as well have locked. But it's tough to say without knowing more and having him here to answer questions and knowing more about the circumstances.
In fact, I'm going to leave him a voice message real quick. Hey, Jim, I just posted a question to Dr. Nadia, and if you're able to get on, she has some questions. So go ahead and jump on or check it out on the archive and let us know, and she'll answer. Okay, and there's another great question from Jorge Augusto Hidalgo Silva. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué estás haciendo? He says, "Hi, I feel a strange sensation on my back." That might be the monkey on your back. No, I'm just kidding. He says, "I feel a strange sensation on my back near my shoulder when doing some sections on my right cymbal. Maybe it's too far. Maybe it's too high up. Greetings from Peru." So is it sometimes ergonomics that could cause a certain stance or posture where a nerve is being pinched that would cause something like that, Nadia?
Yeah, that's part of the problem with those postures is that they can put stress on the nerves. But it could also be, depending on how he's got the cymbal set up and how long he's playing, it could even be a muscle tension issue, or a certain, like maybe one of the muscles in the shoulder girdle is too weak to sustain that posture. And so you start getting some pain. So it could be any number of things. I would suggest maybe trying to move that cymbal a little bit to see if you can't get it a little closer, a little bit more comfortable, and see if that helps. If not, it probably wouldn't hurt to talk to an athletic therapist or a physiotherapist to have them maybe evaluate your shoulder
What's
strength.
going on?
And they might be able to recommend some exercises to strengthen the muscles that control your shoulder blades, and help you maintain that sort of shoulders back and down posture.
Yeah. Okay. And
So
also, Jorge, if you can, go ahead and post a photo of your kit in the comments, and Dr. Nadia can look at that and maybe give a better recommendation. And maybe it's not related to that at all. Maybe there's some cartilage issue going on in there, or bone on bone, something like that. But go ahead and post a photo if you can of your kit in there. That would be helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jim says, Jim Ho, the one I read the text from, here it is. He says, I'm still in Facebook jail for saying a paradiddle had a double paradiddle, but I was hit by a car once from the front and sideways. She's great. So you got some kudos there. And a guy hit by a car who's having some issues with drumming injuries. Sorry, Jim, I don't mean to laugh. I'm glad, Jim, that you're so transparent. I love that. So, yeah, there could be all kinds of things going on there that are causing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bobby Stevens asks, any recommendations after carpal tunnel surgery at the 6-week mark? Are there things that he should be cautious of and hold back on? Are there things maybe he could do, exercises to kind of work that out? I don't know which Bobby, which wrist is it, or both? Do you have any recommendations on that, Nadia?
So my recommendation for anyone who's had surgery is to work closely with your medical team. So any of the stuff like we've talked about before, Dan, any of the things that we talk about on here are
guesses,
conversations and ideas and things to think about, but they can't be taken as medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor.
Right.
And even if I was, you're not here in front of me for me to assess you. So I can't really say that. But in any case, absolutely working with, presumably there's a physiotherapist involved, at least I would hope so, to help with that recovery process, and preferably someone who, if they're not a musician or a drummer themselves, at least have maybe worked with some before, or at least willing to learn and consider it from that angle. You really want to follow their advice closely, because you don't want to take things too far and then set yourself back, especially after something like a surgery.
Yeah, you got to be patient.
Absolutely. And that doesn't mean, no playing at all. It might have at first, but that's for your team to decide. But, if you're not satisfied with the pace at which you're getting back to things, then you got to talk to them about it and ask them, okay, if they say, they don't want you playing more than maybe it starts at 5 minutes a day and at least you're playing, or maybe it's, just a little bit of light, pad work, not getting on the full kit and going for it kind of thing, and slowly building up to that. But you got to talk to your team about that, because they know your situation, they know your surgery, they know where you're at recovery wise, and they're going to be able to make the best recommendation based on your specific situation.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you for that. And one of the things that really sort of scares me about having the surgery for this stuff, and it's not a fear of the surgery whatsoever, is that even though it's outpatient, will I be able to type? I can get away with not playing for a couple weeks if I have to, but the rest of the work to run Drum Talk TV, to run the social media company, requires typing. And I keep looking at my calendar thinking, okay, if I'm going to have this surgery, what, 2 or 3 weeks? I don't have 2 or 3 weeks to not be doing this. So that's something I'm personally struggling with. But at the same time, like you said, you got to listen to your medical team, and you have to do what they recommend for the recovery, or it's just going to continue on until you're able to do that. That much I know. So I'm doing work in a sense where I'm trying to get ahead of the game to create this buffer where, okay, if I schedule it for this date, I got these couple weeks where I can just kind of cruise and not type as much. It's actually a tricky thing. And in 2021, compared to 1961, 71 for at least my parents' ages. It's a different world, and I think everyone's working harder, working more hours. People weren't, using something like this on a daily versus, let alone minute-to-minute basis. So there's things going on up here that they didn't have to deal with, and it's hard to sort of pace the recovery. When Enja and I had COVID, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I don't think I came in here to my office for at least 2.5 weeks, other than once in a while to just peek to answer an email that I could still see on my phone, but I needed to address it on the computer here for attachments. But it was like we were totally under the radar, totally wiped out, slept way more than we ever do, and just had no energy. And we were sort of like in incognito. And that wasn't a planned, scheduled thing. It was something that came up that we were sort of forced to do. And then when that happens, there's nothing you could do about it. So with a planned outpatient patient surgery or recovering post-op, like Bobby Stevens is saying, you've got to be patient and give it the attention it needs, or you're just going to go backwards.
Yeah. And certainly, bring things up to your medical team, like question them about stuff. If you're not satisfied
or
with
understand.
how things are happening, or understand, or if that's why I like doing these shows, is I feel like I'm here to bring you information and food for thought.
Right.
And I want, I'm not a medical doctor or that sort of thing, but I know stuff about injuries. If I can give you information that you can then bring to your medical team to help you ask questions that, maybe you didn't even know to ask, that's kind of what I'm here for. And I think most medical professionals appreciate when their patients do some research on their own and ask good questions and, want to be involved in the process. So yeah, have the conversations, ask them what you can, can we develop a return to playing plan that'll help me get to where I want to be without, potentially setting myself back. So
that's a great point. And regarding the return to play plan, the same thing applies if any of you have quote unquote day jobs as well as playing and gigging. You got to consider that too, because if you've got a day job where you're using your hands and fingers a lot and whatnot, you got to be careful not to re-injure it that way or stretch out the post-op recovery.
Totally.
I'm going to check comments again in a second. Oh, here's one. Oh, no, that's the same one. Sorry. Brian is saying, teach the cat to type. my cat Sage. I should. She's pretty much good at everything else. But in closing, Nadia, can you give us an example with all the research you've done and the polls and the surveys and on this show and whatnot, and the drummers that you've attended concerts with and worked with them? Can you give us an example of one of the more extreme examples of an injury and identify what caused it and how you help them get past it?
An extreme example of an injury. So none of the people that I've worked with were injured at the time that I was working with them. Those were all participants in the energy expenditure study. They were on tour doing their thing. So they may have had aches and pains, but they weren't, as far as I know, nobody was dealing with like a particular injury at the time. Right. In terms of extremes, I don't recall reading anything in with the surveys and things like that of something where I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I think a good example of of extremes and how the ergonomics of your setup can lead to a pretty extreme injury is I recently went back to our NAMM show interviews and my talks with Vinny and Carmine.
Yeah.
And they both had the same issue.
Was it the shoulders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Carmine in particular, apparently he had his, his cymbals are way up here
and he's 93
energetic and crashing. Well, I think this was a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was, but he like blew out his shoulder in the middle of a show.
Yeah.
Because from years and years of playing like, high impact and everything's way up here and the stretching and all that, he had worn down the tendons in his shoulder to the point where it just blew.
Yeah.
On stage during a show. So that is pretty extreme. And Vinny said he had something very similar. I don't think it was quite as extreme, but he definitely he said over the course of the tour, I developed this issue. I'm pretty sure he ended up having surgery on it as well. Yeah. And subsequently they revamped everything, brought it all in closer so that they could continue playing without aggravating and causing further issues.
Yeah, and if you look at photos of Vinny Appice in particular from like the 80s, and even after when he was playing with Dio and then with Black Sabbath, he had this, I'm a big kit guy, he had this immense kit that was very vertical, and he had gong drums way up there, and the toms were set up more vertical than they were linear in a horizontal manner, so he was constantly, stretching, and that's got to really play a number on all of this and your shoulder, and it's just a domino effect of possibilities there, the way he was set up.
Yeah.
So that makes
definitely
perfect sense.
So I'd have to say those were probably the most extreme examples.
Well, they're extreme guys, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for watching. And again, if you're watching on the archive, go ahead and put in your questions. Nadia and I will check this out over the next few days. And you can catch us every month. It's not on a specific day, but it's usually around the same time. Usually within about the last week of the month. We look forward to doing this again in February. I can't believe we're saying February. I still haven't got the January newsletter out, and there's like 2 days left in February, but some really cool stuff coming up. And if you're watching this on the archive after these things have happened, just look in the videos album on the Facebook page or on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube or Vimeo or Instagram, and that is that on Saturday, which is the 30th, tomorrow, 2 big things are happening. Rob Wallace of Hudson Music and myself and Tommy Igo, we're going to announce the winners of the 15-year anniversary celebration of Groove Essentials 1, ages from little kids up to seniors. We're going to be doing that. That's at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern Time, January 30th, and then a couple hours later or so at 3 Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm so excited about doing a tribute to Phil Collins for his birthday. I'm not just going to play Genesis, but I'm going to play some really deep cuts of Phil with Genesis from the early 70s, some of his solo stuff, some stuff with Robert Plant, Tears for Fears, Eric Clapton. I'm really excited. So join us for that live or watch it on the archive. And Nadia, I want to thank you so much for taking time to kickstart the show again, this series for the new year, and provide us with great information so we can all stay healthy.
Well, thanks for having me again. I always like coming on. So looking forward to doing it again soon.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Nadia. And Nadia, stay on the line for a moment. Thanks, everybody, so much for following what we do. And I know I've been saying this for 2 weeks,